All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us at our event today. So before I introduce the panelists and go through, I'll introduce myself. My name is Leah Formenti. I'm a graduate student in experimental high energy physics at McGill University. Behind the scenes, we have Christina Nelson, who is in my same group, and Lisa Dang, who works on exoplanets at McGill Space Institute. So we have a code of conduct today. We really want everyone to have meaningful discussions, and we can only do that if everyone feels safe and welcome. So if you have concerns or feel uncomfortable or any questions at all, you can either email christina.nelson@mail.mcgill.ca or message Christina Nelson directly in Zoom, and we'll deal with that problem. But essentially, keep your communication professional, and harassment of any time will not be tolerated. So I can stop that. Yeah. I currently live on the unceded land of the Ganyangehaga and Haudenosaunee people. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations and is still home to a diverse populations of Indigenous and other peoples. As you all think about your futures during this event, I invite you to also think about how you can take actions towards reconciliation in your career paths. Today, we've got an exciting event for you. We have 4 panelists who all have PhDs in physics in various fields who are now in the field of data science. So how this is going to go is essentially, I will introduce them. I will then ask them a couple questions to get everyone situated as to what their backgrounds are, and then we will go into your questions. So how you ask questions depends entirely on the preference. If you happen to be in the bell room, raise your hand and Lisa will inform me that you'd like to speak. If you'd like to ask your question out loud in Zoom, use the raise hand feature, and again, someone will inform me you would like to speak. You can also type your question into the chat or into the Q&A. And if you'd like to ask a message privately, you can direct message Christina Nelson. With that, time to introduce our panelists. So first we have Annabelle Chunal. Annabelle is a senior data scientist at Urban Logic. She received her PhD in high energy physics at McGill University in 2018, and now she lives in Vancouver, BC. And she was actually in Christina and I's group, so we're very excited to have her. Taka Tanaka heads the data science practice at Radish Fiction. He also previously worked at WW, which is formerly Weight Watchers, and a consulting firm where he partnered with television and streaming companies. He received his PhD in astrophysics at Columbia in 2011, left academia in 2016 following being a postdoc and a research assistant professor, and now lives in Brooklyn, New York. Third panelist is Yan Gobet, who is a data scientist at Decathlon Canada for the past 2 years. Yan finished his PhD in theoretical high energy physics, another McGill alum, in 2019. Then finally, we have Jeffrey Silverman. He is Director Data Science and Analytics at Samba TV. Before moving into tech, he was a National Science Foundation Astronomy and Astrophysics postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas in Austin, and earned his PhD in astrophysics at University of California, Berkeley, working on supernovae and dark energy. So now that you have a basic background of everyone, I will essentially just ask our panelists their first question. And that one is, where are you coming from and what is your journey? So perhaps we can start with Jeffrey.
All right, unmuted, here we go. Sure, so you heard a bit about my journey, PhD at UC Berkeley, NSF postdoc in Texas, and then towards the end of the postdoc realized that I was interested in leaving academia. I had friends that got into big data and tech companies, and so my path took me to the Insight Data Science program in the San Francisco area. That is a pretty well-known data science sort of training program and placement program. Did that for a few months, and then got my first job out of academia at Samba TV, and I've been here ever since. So December will be 5 years at Samba. I started off as a data scientist, and then kind of leveled up as a data scientist, individual contributor, and then moved over to a management track. And so I have led a variety of teams in a variety of countries with different backgrounds within Samba TV. And so that is sort of my path. Should I get into more of what I do day to day, or is that another question, Leah?
That's another question.
Okay.
Can you tell me why you transitioned?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. So as I was finishing up my postdoc down at UT, I was sort of thinking about next steps. Typically next step after a first postdoc is usually a second postdoc. I was thinking about also applying for faculty positions as well. I was definitely interested in that track at the time. And sort of was just looking around at, what other people were doing, both inside and outside of academia, friends of mine. And then really just doing the thought experiment of, there was that year, for the 2016 academic year, there was a couple of professor jobs that sounded really great. They were at universities I really liked. They were potentially working with people I had already worked with, I really liked working with. Even if I had a small chance of getting those jobs, they would have been, effectively dream jobs. And so, I spent time thinking, if I got that offer, which is, a 2 to 3% chance or whatever it is, what would that entail? And doing that thought experiment of all the positives and negatives of those positions, I was kind of on the fence. I thought there was a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. And then I took a step back and said, okay, if I have this many positives and negatives about what is effectively my dream job in this academic professorial route, that is an indication that I should not be going that direction. And so that, I think, really was the step that I said, okay, then that's not for me. Where should I go from here? And like I said, I had a lot of friends that went to the data science tech industry route. And I thought that sounded really interesting. And so that's sort of where I started exploring that and moved that direction.
Great, thank you. Thank you for specifying that. I think a lot of us are wondering, what are we going to do and why? And yeah, I'll go on to Taka then, if you wouldn't mind giving us, what is your journey? Why did you end up in data science?
Did you want me to do a land acknowledgement?
I did actually, yeah. And I'll come back to you, Jeffrey, if you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to respectfully acknowledge that I live on the unceded territories of the Lenape people, specifically the Canarsie people, who inhabited, whose ancestral lands span Brooklyn and Long Island and parts of southern Manhattan. So my journey, pretty similar to Jeffrey's actually. I got my PhD at Columbia in 2011, then went to one of the Max Planck Institutes outside Munich, where I worked with, if you're an astronaut, you might know Rashid Snayev. Then I did a second postdoc with a research faculty title at Stony Brook University. And kind of delving into the reasons why I left academia at that point. I worked my tail off in academia. I wrote something like 20 papers in my time in academia, and I didn't get a faculty position. A couple of times I applied. And, my mentors told me, hey, just keep doing what you're doing and you just need a little bit of luck on your side. And I think that's something that a lot of people in academia at that stage hear. And I just got tired of that luck part. If I'm doing good work, then shouldn't I have a good job where I want to live? And that's the core reason I left academia. I went through the Insight Data Science program. It's based in the New York program, so parallel path to Jeffrey. Then I got a job as a data scientist working for a small consulting company of about 50 people called Pearson Associates. Through that job, I learned a lot about business, specifically the television and tech industries. I worked with companies like Google, Viacom, CBS, some that are under NDA that I can't talk about, but some of the largest streaming platforms in the world. And then I started looking to see if there were greener pastures elsewhere, and I moved on to Weight Watchers. The pandemic hit and things happened. My boss got laid off, things happened. And then I landed at my current role in Radish Fiction. I can talk a little bit more about how I landed in Radish. It was actually a really fortuitous series of events of networking. So that's where I am at Radish Fiction. I am the Director of Data Science. That's my title. I report directly to the C-suite. I lead the company's data practice. So I'll probably pause there and then leave the rest for follow-up questions.
Wonderful, thank you. Jeffrey, did you want a chance to jump in with the land acknowledgement?
Yes. So I want to respectfully acknowledge that I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, historically populated by the Muwekma Ohlone Indian tribe. Specifically, the East Bay, the Berkeley area, is historically populated by the Chochenyo people, which I actually didn't know that, so I learned something from this as well. That was awesome.
Great, thanks. Now I'll move on to Annabelle. Please tell us about your journey and how you ended up where you are today, starting though with the land acknowledgement, if you can.
Yeah, so I would like to acknowledge I'm on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I really thank them for having take care of the beautiful lands and waters I get to enjoy here in the Vancouver area. So as per my path out of academia, I think I just knew I wanted to leave academia by probably the last year of my PhD. At this time, I was like, oh, I really want to, make an impact. And I was feeling a little bit isolated in my group. I was working at CERN in a high energy physics group. And I was feeling like I wanted to do something for the world, And so I finished my PhD in 2018, October 2018 something, and then moved to Vancouver with my boyfriend, who is in the cinema industry. And so we decided to move to Vancouver just because there were more opportunities for him there. So I just started looking for jobs, applying here and there, found an opportunity with the UBC incubator, it's called Hatch, and started working on basically building a startup from scratch on AI for hiring, mostly. Stayed there for a while until I met somebody very interesting who was the CEO of a small startup called Kila, and it's what they basically do is they are a CRM for nonprofits. So a CRM, if you don't know what it is just a way of building a database of usually clients, but in the case for nonprofits, in this case it was donors. And so I was hired, started working for them for free at the beginning, and then was hired full-time with them to basically build their full suite of the intelligence tool for the CRM. And I stayed there for 2 years. Until then, I found another job in city planning at this company that I am here now since January. It's called Urban Logic, and what we do is basically helping municipalities, big cities, sometimes states collect and analyze data to get the most out of it, optimize traffic, etc. So that's what I do.
Great, thanks so much. And then last but not least, Yan Gouvet.
Hello. So first I want to say that I live in Terrebonne on the north shore of Montreal, which is on the territory of the Ganyan-Gay-Aka people. And this means people of the Flint, which is pretty interesting, I thought, when I found that. And I want to give my support, full support to this community who brought up basically the land that I live on. So regarding me, I basically decided to switch to from physics to AI data science at the last year of my PhD, when my supervisor told me that like basically asked me what I wanted to do after my PhD. So either to postdoc or go in industry. So I searched what was available for a physicist, since I didn't want to do postdocs, move around the world, and not even being sure that I would get a job, and not I didn't want to have my children grow up in another country. So that's one really important thing for me. So I decided to look into what was doable for physicists, and I learned about AI, which I really didn't know anything about in the past. Like, people were talking about machine learning, I had no idea what that was. And then I started to take a few online courses to figure out what it was, to see if it was interesting. And during the whole last year of my PhD, I worked part-time on that, gain more skills to help me find a job. I was lucky to have a scholarship for a while, so I could work on that while working on my PhD, and waiting until I found a job to finish my PhD to graduate. So I did that. And then after postulating to a lot of jobs and finding having different interviews, I found a job at Decathlon Canada. For people who don't know what it is, Decathlon is an international sports retailer. I think it's the biggest one in the world. It's pretty new in Canada. So I have two jobs there. One is related to data mostly, so for stores in Canada. Our team is the only one that has access to the data. So about sales, members, transactions, and all that stuff. So people from the marketing teams in stores and all that kind of people ask us for data and data analysis and all that stuff, dashboards and many things like that. But we also work on other more interesting thing, I would say. So I work on computer vision, which is getting information from images using AI. So more specifically in that case, from sport images. So I train machine learning models to detect the sport that's practiced in an image, or the type of sport equipment in an image. I also work on different things. Like, for now, we have interesting projects on the smart sizing. So from an image, detect what size of clothes you should wear. Virtual try-on. So you can try the clothes online on yourself, just using a picture. So projects like that are, I think, pretty interesting. And I've been working there for 2 years. That's my only job that I had so far, and I think I grew a lot in that job, so I'm pretty happy.
Great, thank you so much. So that's a basis, giving all our listeners here a background for how you all ended up where you are. But what does your current job entail? So you can consider all or some of the following questions. How are you challenged? What are some examples of your projects? Some of you have given that. What skills from your PhD do you use? What are some common tools for the job? What was the pay, for example? Yeah, details of your current job. And we can start with Taka this time.
Okay, I was just about to write down some of those bullet points, so hopefully I remember to cover everything. Yeah, so I'm basically the head of data science for a company of around 70 people. My primary job is making sure that the company itself, our parent company, we were recently acquired this summer, and all of the different team leads and department heads have all of the data insights that they need. That's my primary responsibility. I also manage a team of analysts and data scientists. So I want to make sure that they have everything they need, that they're happy, that there are no blockers to their day-to-day, that they're feeling supported and connected despite the remote work situation. Some of the skills I use from my PhD, I would say throughout my career track as data scientist, from individual contributor to my managerial responsibilities, I would say that the ability to handle complexity and ambiguity is probably number one. It's the one thing that I frequently see in PhD level candidates that you don't see from people that have maybe are straight out of college or have a couple of years of work experience. When given an ambiguous or open-ended question, being able to kind of map out possible paths forward, figuring out where the bottlenecks or pain points or possible failure points might be is really important in trying to scope out the whole project. I'd say another thing that I use a lot is interpersonal communication. It's being able to set and manage expectations, especially to team leaders who might not be, most of whom aren't well-versed in quantitative methods or statistics, explaining to them at a high level how the methods that we're using works, that just connecting with them to make sure that the thing that we're designing or building for them meets their needs. That's a key piece as you start to build out solutions for business, that you want to make sure that you are checking in with people regularly to make sure that you're doing work that they want to do and not just something that satisfies your or your team's curiosity. Did I miss anything? I think that basically covers my day-to-day.
Great, thank you. Annabelle, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said, Taka, about the ability to deal with complex problem, and I really feel that this is an important skill we do have as PhDs. I'd say this intuition of kind of knowing what will have an impact and what really doesn't matter. I think is something that I noticed PhD candidates and the PhD colleagues I have had, and this ability to basically translate a complex problem into small bits that you can actually solve step by step. More often than not, people get afraid of a complex problem and they don't know where to start. And so I think that's something that PhDs have, and I think it's definitely an acquired skill, right? It's not something that comes naturally. You really have to train, and doing a PhD is a way of doing that. So the question was what I do, right? Every day.
Yeah, day to day.
Day to day. So I do various things, from meeting with clients, and actually this part of being able to formulate the questions and understanding what the clients need is part of the job, and it's a big part of the job actually. And I really enjoyed doing that. So often we have different clients. We work sometimes with states. So right now I'm working with the state of Minnesota to try and predict wildfires and residential fires based on using the data they have access to. So whether or not they will need a dashboard to help them predict and assess the needs for a fire station in some remote places and things like that. You got to figure out what they need first, and you got to figure out what's the results going to look like. So that's part of my job. So I do a lot of prospecting research, as well as sometimes a little bit of UX research. And on the other side, I do all the data wrangling, data cleaning, and model development kind of things. So it's very diverse. There is a lot of soft skill to have, and there is also a lot of technical skill to have or acquire.
That's neat. I especially like the use of the word data wrangling, like very active. Nice. So next, Jan, could you give us an overview of your day-to-day?
Yeah. So if you asked me a few months or like a year ago, I would have said it's basically just training machine learning models. which is what I learned at the beginning during my PhD, and that's what I was doing at the beginning. But I started learning a lot of different things, and that's one thing that I agree with what everyone has said so far about the skills that you use from your PhD. But one that I would add is a way that I like to describe what a PhD is that you learn to learn. So we're really good at learning new skills, learning new new hard or soft skills, like both of them. And that's one thing that I think we also like to do. So I tried to learn a lot of different things. So I started from just doing machine learning, but now I'm also involved in the deployment part for various reasons. Like some people involved in that left, and we had to move a bit, but I like to learn that. So the deployment, and I'm also involved in management a bit. So I take basically for the computer vision part of the team, I always have interns that help me with problems like that. And I manage them basically. So I guide them in their day-to-day work. And also hiring process, or that's also one responsibility that I'm working on right now, actually. So I'm taking on different tasks. So to make my days a bit different. So it could be a lot of management working on an intern project, or it could be deployment for a week of a model that I built, or it could be a week working on one problem, or like I said earlier, it could be having people from stores asking me for data. So it's a lot of variation. That's what I like. And also I'm always looking for new things. So I always keep some time to learn new stuff that is useful and interesting to me and useful for the team, and finding relations between what's useful for the team and the company and my own interests. So it's a lot of variation, I think.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Thank you. Jeffrey, would you please tell us a bit about Samba TV and what you do there?
Sure. So Samba is a TV analytics company. We have technology inside millions of smart TVs around the world. And if you opt into our service, we try to figure out what you're watching on TV and can use that for, recommendations on other stuff that you might like to watch on TV. Targeted advertising, as you might imagine, is a part of it. And so what my teams have historically been in charge of are those sort of measurement products. The really like one sentence description is, does the advertising work? Right. And so that's the description. And then it's, do you mean advertising on your phone for a TV show? Do you mean a TV commercial for fast food? Do you want to break it down by country or demographics or other stuff? All of that kind of stuff. Doing the experimentation of, just because more people tune into a show who saw the ad, is it statistically significant, right? Applying statistics and machine learning modeling to predict what your advertisement is going to do. All of that stuff kind of falls under what my data science teams have historically built out. And then as far as the skills that I apply, or the things that I do, basically just a +1 on what everyone has already said. That idea of taking that complicated, open-ended question or ambiguous question, breaking it into manageable steps is hugely important. Sort of along with that, I think, is a sense of data and numbers. I think most astronomy and physics PhDs that I've met, if you give them a list of numbers with like a one-sentence description of what those numbers are, they can come up with something, whether it's, let's make a histogram, let's take the average, what's the minimum and maximum? Oh, look, they're only positive numbers. Does that make sense? Should there be negative numbers? Are there missing values? That kind of data sense is something that a lot of physics and astronomy folks who have done research kind of innately learn over the years. And that's incredibly important in data science roles, especially at the beginnings of projects where you really do have that kind of mess of data or numbers and you want to do something with it. And then the last thing that I'll mention as far as a skill that's used, aside from communication and all of this, learning things that other people have said, is some kind of computer coding, computer programming. A lot of places use Python, some use R, there might be some SQL involved, there might be other stuff. I learned PySpark. That's a whole new language I didn't know. It kind of looks like Python. It kind of looks like SQL. It acts differently, but I learned that on the job. And again, like I think Jan was saying, we are PhDs and grad students are good at learning new stuff. So as long as you know some computer programming language, even if it's IDL or Fortran or one of the silly astronomy specific ones, you might want to learn Python soon, or R, but just knowing, how to break down a problem and code it up, even if it's not the cleanest, best code, you know those basics, and that's skills that you can learn on the job or practice as you're prepping for, interviews, for example.
Great, thanks so much. We're starting to get a couple questions in already, so I'll ask a couple from the audience now, but most of the audience questions we'll save till after the end. But one specific for Taka was how much and how different is the workload compared to academia?
That's a great question. I'd say a key difference is not only the workload, but the respect for balance. Obviously, this depends a ton on the individual company, your individual bosses, clients, industry, etc. In academia, I worked nights and weekends a lot. Like anytime I had spare time to concentrate on a paper I was writing, I would do it a lot. I would also take a lot of breaks because, academia, especially in theory, there's a lot of flexibility. And that's something my partner came to expect, that, after dinner, if there's like a few hours of quiet time, I might start doing work. And that was something that was kind of accepted. In industry, it's much more common to kind of start work at 10 a.m. and then clock out around 6. And then that's your kind of day to day. And there are lots of jobs where no one really expects anything more from you. There's some industries where, like the consulting industry, where you might be asked to pull long hours ahead of a deadline, where you just have to get the thing done. Startups, I think that's very common, ahead of an investor delivery, things like that. You might pull a 50 or 60-hour week. But I think everywhere that I've seen, it's pretty normal. If you put in a long week, then your bosses are usually fine. You have to take a couple of days off the following week. Take your vacation days. This might be a good time to use up some of your unlimited PTO. I currently work for a company that's half based in Korea and half based in different parts of the US. So there's one day out of the week where I have evening meetings, but I've made it absolutely clear to everyone else I'm not going to do any other evening meetings. Obviously, as an executive, I have some privilege. I have a position of privilege where I can refuse to work certain hours, but it's, I have a block of time from 5 to 6 p.m. that's designated family time, urgent meetings only. And it's basically anyone that interacts with me or tries to book a meeting with me knows that. I have a toddler at home. I'm working from home. And so that kind of respect for, right, you have more important things to do than this 9 to 5 gig. That's much more accepted.
Great, thanks. Yeah, since that question was part of the day-to-day, I'll ask a couple more of the day-to-day type jobs questions that we've got coming through. So how fast can a data science career grow? So how fast is promotion, for example? So maybe a quick answer from a couple of you would be helpful on that.
Yeah, it really depends. I think 1 to 2 years is probably a median window. Depends on the type of the company, depends on the industry, depends on how fast the company is growing. Some companies just promote people just to keep people happy. So I think people learn to kind of ask, okay, is this a vanity promotion or is this a real, something where someone excelled? As someone in a hiring position, I try to read between those lines. But on average, I think every couple of years is reasonable to expect a promotion. There was a related questions in the thread about job security. Yeah. And how stable or how frequently people change workplaces. So I've changed workplaces more frequently than I would have if I kept doing postdocs in academia. But I think the difference is it was by choice. And every time I did, I essentially leveled up my career. And I feel like I've landed in a better place at each one of those steps. On job security, layoffs happen in business. They're not very common, especially in tech. as startups, your company can go under, things like that. But I think the thing to think about here is not job security for me, but career security. If you are a data scientist, if you are a data engineer, if you are a data analyst, and I can talk about the difference in those job titles a little later. I think that's really important to discuss. But if you are in a data adjacent or software adjacent field in tech, you are very employable. People will be desperate to hire you. You're not going to be unemployed for more than a couple of months if you already have that track record. And so I think that's the main thing. It's like, if you lose your postdoc in academia, say mid-hiring season, that could be catastrophic for you. In industry, it's disappointing, it's crappy, but you move on. So I think that's a key difference.
Yeah, one
Thank
thing.
you. Yeah, I
just
see you
add on.
nodding vigorously,
Well,
Jeffrey,
yeah,
so
I
go
mean,
for it.
Taka and I have been on a lot of these panels together, and so we know we answer similar questions in similar ways. But one thing I did want to point out was the hiring season. There is no hiring season. It's all the time, right? Taka reminded me that, like, in academia, if you lose a job or something happens and it's not in those sort of 3 months where everybody gets their jobs, you're in trouble. The other thing I wanted to ask Taka was, of all those jobs that you moved around, how many times did you and your family physically move cities?
That'd be a big zero, Jeffrey.
Yeah. So, even more so now with so much, remote work being fully, full remote accepted, et cetera. If you're in pretty large cities that are tech hub areas, you can move jobs, whether you want to, or if a company does go under and you get rehired somewhere else, without bouncing randomly all over the world, like many people in academia end up having to do. But otherwise, I agree with everything Taka said, and similar experience.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. I'll move on to another question. This is about hiring. What's the hiring process like? How can our young graduate students here prepare? And comments on that. Who can start with Annabelle?
I'm a pretty bad candidate to answer this question because I've never been hired through any interviews. So when I moved to Vancouver, started working with UBC Hatch, it was just like, I made some friends and they hired me. And then for Kila, I started by working for free with them for 6 months because I had to prove that I could do the job, and that was the way. So I worked for free part-time, and then they hired me full-time. So I didn't got any interview per se. And for the job I am in right now, I met the people a couple times before, and they just decided to hire me because they realized I had the skills, but I didn't go through any kind of interviews either at this stage. So it was only by networking that I managed to climb the ladder, if I should say. I went to a few interviews when I was looking for jobs, and they were very different. Like I applied for also different jobs, so not only in data science but also in project management, because that was something I was also actually quite interested in. But for data science, most of the time we have like a small like assignment to prepare, and within a week or so, and then you would get to know if you get to have the proper interview with the team afterwards, and that was how it went. But so I got accepted to a few of the later steps, but I always found a job through other ways. So yeah, as I said, not a very good candidate for that question.
But it's still a useful experience. Yeah, and what was your experience like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't do many interviews. So when I was trying to find a job at the end of my PhD, I got one interview I got a few like coding challenges, like that I feel like were sent to everyone, and just like I was not the software developer, so it was just I failed, so that was okay. But then I found one that was basically looking for PhDs in different areas, And it was the kind of interview that I like. And I was surprised to get that kind of interview, which was mostly discussion to know about the projects that I did, about what I like to do, about my experience and all that stuff. And I ended up having pretty much the same kind of interview for Decathlon, which is, I learned after, since I'm here, that we always do that, and we don't like to have, because I know I'm curious to see what the others have to say, but from what I expect from a data science machine learning interview is a lot of basically you have to study a lot, you have to there's questions that you need to know the answer to, and or there's a coding challenge that you need to code live or stuff like that. That all, I feel like all of that doesn't reflect if you're going to be good at a job or not. It's just a test. So I was really lucky first to not do that kind of job interview, and I was happy to also join a team that doesn't believe in that kind of interview. So for now, when I interview interns, and now I'm in the recruitment process for another person to join our team, it's always like that. It's more of a discussion to get to know you. If we have a doubt that maybe you talk about projects, but you're not sure if you're actually good at coding, or if you don't have a GitHub repository with examples of codes, then maybe ask some project, a small example of, like, you have a few days to give us like to code a small API or something like that. But in general, it's more of a discussion about the previous projects, focusing on your most relevant project that you did, personal project or job related. Yeah, that was that's my experience, at least so far.
Thank you. Jeffrey, hiring, how does that go?
Yeah, so there's a lot here. I think it depends on the company. Everything is totally different. I mean, you're going to hear that that's a stock answer to these kinds of questions. At Samba, I've been a hiring manager for 3 years now, done hundreds of interviews for all different levels of data scientist and analyst, and data engineers, actually. And we do have, a technical bar, a technical level that we expect. Given the role, that bar has a different level. Given the kind of experience that we're looking for, or the type of person we're looking for, that bar has a different level. But there is a level. And so we do a coding challenge where we expect you to write some code live. We expect you to have, we'll give you a problem to take home and spend a few hours on, present it to us. We'll ask you questions about, in a variety of different scenarios, an actual problem that we have at Samba, and, work with our data and talk us through your logic. Even, we do problems on basic probability, stuff about flipping coins and playing rock, paper, scissors. And no, we don't sit at Samba and flip coins and play rock, paper, scissors, but we want to know, do you know some basic probability, information, and can you logic through a problem? Can you walk us through your mindset and your thought process? Because that's incredibly important. You have to be able to work collaboratively with the rest of the team and not just go off on your own, do something and bring it back. You have to be able to talk people through what you're doing and what you're thinking. And so that's what we use those kinds of problems for. I don't care that you remember Bayes' theorem. I care that you can walk me through how you're thinking about the problem of flipping coins, right? So that's sort of the all the topics that get covered. Programming, whether it's Python or SQL, a little bit of probability and statistics, some basic machine learning type, pick an algorithm and describe it to me. Some more business specific stuff of, did you read about what Samba TV actually does? Here's some data and a setup. How do you think through it? So those are sort of our pieces of the interview process. And then somebody was also asking a little bit about training, boot camp, and networking. Networking is a huge deal. LinkedIn is a real thing. Everyone who's in this has 4 working data scientists that they should be LinkedIn connected with by the end of today, right? And so those are connections. The other thing that I will tell you is that people, working data scientists, want you to get a job. They want you to get hired somewhere, especially at their own company, because there's this magical thing called a referral bonus. If I put your resume in and say, this person looks good, I think they have a good background, they attended one of these data science panels I was on, they seem kind of interesting, I don't know them that well, but I think they could be a good fit. If you get hired, I get $10,000 US. The end. Like, that's awesome. I want that. I'm rooting for you. And so you should be reaching out to as many people in LinkedIn or through academia, through universities as possible to get that, whether it's feedback on a resume, which is very different than an academic CV and a whole other discussion, or, hey, I worked on this, or could you take a look at, this project I did that I want to submit as sort of a portfolio or GitHub or whatever, all of those kinds of things, leverage your networking.
Thank you. Yeah, that was some great tips on networking. Taka, did you want to join in on the hiring conversation?
Yeah. I'm going to echo parts of what all the other panelists said. I want to kind of zoom out and look at the hiring process itself. What's the first thing happens? The first thing that happens, what's the last thing? The first thing that happens is someone's going to be looking at your resume. It will probably, unless it's a small company, it's not going to be the hiring manager. It's probably going to be someone in HR. It might be a recruiter that's trying to place you in a job. The second thing that happens is what's called a screen call. It's typically about a 15 to 20 minute phone conversation. It could be with a hiring manager. Most of the time it's with a recruiter or a junior member at that company. Mostly kind of probing to see if you can intelligibly talk through your past experiences. You can communicate what's on your resume. You can ask basic questions, maybe questions about your pay expectations. So, you're not wasting each other's time if those expectations are mismatched. And then there might be an introductory call with the hiring manager. There could be a coding assignment where you have like a week to complete a series of exercises on a real data set. Then there may be kind of one-on-one interviews. Some of those interviews could be technical or case studies. A lot of those interviews might be behavioral. So like, tell me about a time that this happened. What are some challenges you face in your current role? What would you do if a client were to say this? If someone didn't have trouble understanding Bayes' theorem, how would you go about explaining to them? Things like that. And then there might be a couple of final interviews, but that's usually the process. They're probing for the basic technical requirements for the job, and then probing to see if you're a good fit for the company, good fit on the team. If you have the kind of thinking style that would make you a good collaborator on that team, things like that. So that's kind of the rundown. There will be some hiring processes at some companies that are much more kind of quizzy. Do you know X? Do you know Y? They might be much more put you on the spot. And then there might be, as Jan said, interviews that are much more collaborative, that are much more like a conversation. And I think a company can tell you a lot about themselves through that interview process. If they're being really persnickety or really, unreasonably picky at that process, do you really want to be on that other side of the curtain? Is that maybe you're dodging a bullet by not qualifying for their interviews? It's one thing to talk about. I think a good hiring manager should try to make the hiring process as comparable to what you actually, comparable to the day-to-day. I try to make, if there's a take-home component, I try to make it so that they're giving, a data set that's pretty similar to ours, that they're asked to solve questions that's pretty comparable to what we want you to solve on the job. Because otherwise, how do you tell if you're a good fit? So definitely pro for that. I would say, like, once you get the first couple of stages of that hiring process, that screen call, etc., it's a great opportunity for you to learn about the company, not just the other way around.
Great, thank you for the advice there. Now I'll just go right into audience questions. So it's really time audience members just like fire them through in the chat, the Q&A, direct message to Christina, ask them in the bell room, or use the raise hand feature. You can go for it. There's a question for Annabelle. You mentioned in the beginning your desire to make an impact, and this question asked here resonated with that. Would you say you've fulfilled that desire?
I'd say yes. It took some time though. I think I had a lot of things to learn, and the first thing that I learned was that data science is not all about solving thrilling problems. Most of the time, you have to work on, things like data cleaning and how to automate that, how to productionize a model, so make it able to being trained on online. Things like that are not, so it's difficult to gauge the impact of this, right? And sometimes I feel like it's just a mean to actually reach an objective, but so it's easy to lose sight of the impact. Where I am now, I feel like I have enough experience to be able to, and enough knowledge as well, to be able to, take a step back and have a look at what I know, and always frame the problems I'm trying to solve, and have a vision, and really consider the impact of what I'm doing on the long range. So it's much more tangible than it used to be. When I started working in data science, I was doing a lot of data cleaning. I still do that, but now I do that with experience, and I have the skill set and the tools that allows me to be more efficient at doing this. So I don't feel like I spend all of my time doing this. So I guess that's my answer to it. Yes, I really see the impact of my work on a day-to-day basis, but also it takes time to be able to do that.
Great, thanks for answering that. We've got a couple people who are very interested in preparing for the transition, and specifically, would you encourage them to do boot camps or acquire skills before interviewing, or do like courses or such? Anyone can take that one.
I think it depends on your learning style, right? Some people they're very comfortable taking online courses and learning, the fundamentals of machine learning online. This is personally what I did, and I was happy with that. And I think I learned a bunch through this. Some other people really love to be thinking in group, working collaboratively with others, and solving problems. Things like hackathons are also pretty like a great opportunity to get to learn stuff in a short amount of time. Yeah,
maybe I can also go with what I usually tell people and what I did. Like Annabelle, I started with online courses. Because I think it's important to know the basics of what you're doing. Like, if you don't know what to Google, then it's not a good idea to just go out there and try to find stuff. So just knowing what is possible, what's available, what's being done. But then don't spend too much time on courses, because that's not where you learn how to do stuff. Like, you learn what's available, but most of your time, it's also why I don't like the quiz type of interviews, is because in real life I spend a lot of my time just Googling how to do something, and that's how you learn. Like, you learn how it's done, how like different possibilities of ways of doing something. So the way I think is best to learn is to pick a project. Like, just really pick something that you care about, that you think is useful or interesting, and build something from it. So build, go from scratch. Don't do Kaggle problems where the data set is already clean. You just have to get the best metric possible, or like build something in your day-to-day life. Like, you want to, like what I did, the project that I did, it was not that interesting, but it was just a language identifier. So I had to collect the data, train a model, deploy it to make it available, so that you can give it a word and it tells you if it's in French, English, or Spanish. So I learned a lot of stuff from that that I didn't know existed, or that I would not have learned from just a course. But just picking a problem and examining which way to approach it, and go from the start to the end. So to from nothing, like you don't have data, you don't have anything, learn how to get it, learn how to clean it, learn how to build a model, and then final product that you would give a client, like an API that's available online, a website or something like that. I think it's for me at least, it's the best way to learn something, to just learn the basics and then apply it to something.
Thank you. Yeah. And then Jeffrey, I think you said you did a program called Data Insights. Am I correct?
Yeah, so both Taka and I went through the Insight Data Science Fellowship. I would say that, one thing I want to point out is there's a heck of a lot of variety in what people call boot camps, training programs, et cetera. Everything from a handful of free courses on Coursera to 6-month-long, many tens of thousands of dollar programs. I will say that everybody who's in grad school for physics or astronomy or something like that is already doing some sort of boot camp effectively, right? You're learning a lot of these skills already. And so there's a lot of stuff that can be done. I have good friends that did online courses for free. They went to meetups in person. This was pre-COVID, but hopefully those will come back in the near future, and networked and learned stuff that way, sort of a grassroots, self-made program. Many other folks like myself, Taka, others have gone through the Insight program, which really it takes PhDs or people who have finished their PhDs or finishing it, and gets them that last little bit of training that they might need. So it's very much more focused on networking, on presenting yourself to companies, and rather than let's learn about machine learning from the very basics. They kind of expect you to know some of that, which people can study on their own for free, et cetera. So there's a wide range of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think it depends on your background and how comfortable you feel with these topics and with learning on your own. If you have time to learn this stuff on your own or apply it to your research, that's great. That's probably the best, most efficient way to do it.
Great.
Yeah, on the bootcamp thing, I will say a big component of a bootcamp is often the networking aspect. So the great thing that Insight did was it brought companies to us. So we're in a room, maybe 20 fellows sitting in a room, and then there are companies, telling us about their business, how they use data, who they're looking for, what the day-to-day looks like, etc. And those connections are something you don't get out of taking Coursera courses. And another thing that Insight did for me was through sitting through all of those company presentations, through guidance on, okay, here's how you prepare for an interview, here's the kind of things that might be expected knowledge. After a few weeks of that, I kind of grokked the lingo. I kind of knew what companies were looking for. I kind of got the atmosphere, and that atmosphere alone made me a much stronger candidate during interviews, because I had seen it. It's like, sitting through colloquia in physics. Before you do it, you've only read the papers, and after you do it, you've seen people talk about it. And that piece made me a much stronger interviewer. And honestly, I don't know if I would have gotten a data science job as quickly as I had if I hadn't had that experience.
Great, thank you. So Annabelle, I know you have to head out right now because you have a meeting. Do you have any last words you'd like to share?
It's okay. I have to head out at 2, so it's 5 for me. So it's okay. I still have 1 hour.
You still have 1 hour. Yeah, so everyone had said that like an extra 10 minutes would be okay. We've still got some questions. So feel free to bow out now, anyone, if you have to. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so then our next question, someone was asking for Taka specifically, does entering industry after a postdoc have advantages, disadvantages versus entering after grad school? And then a related question, is there any stigma against academia people switching to data science?
So I'll answer the first one first. There are a few things, pros and cons, mostly pros, I think. For me, and I think for a lot of people that are kind of not sure if they want to try it, how long they want to try the academia route, doing a postdoc buys you time. It kind of, lets you see what your chances might be on the faculty job market if you push out a few more papers. It lets you see how other people, your peers are doing. It lets you explore more. If nothing else, it buys you time while you've tried to figure things out. Then on the actual kind of pros and cons for the job, I like to think that the postdocs I did gave me skills that I didn't have when I finished my PhD. And yes, some of it is just learning to do calculations and, multitasking, working on multiple projects efficiently. But I would say like 95% of what I gained from the postdocs is interpersonal skills, collaborations, leading your own collaborations, running meetings, figuring out next steps on a project without, your supervisor telling you what to do. My, postdoc advisors were extremely hands-off, at least at MPA. So, and, you attend big conferences. I was put on the spot by some of the biggest, most hostile professors in astrophysics. And I think that experience, equipped me really well when I'm put on the spot by a client CEO or the CTO of a multi-billion-dollar company is challenging my work. I can sit there calmly and I can rebut their points or tell them when they're right and how we can address that problem. But I don't think I would have been able to do that straight out of grad school. Then there's the perceptions of having done a couple of postdocs. So, no one's going to look at a resume with a couple of postdocs and say, oh, yes, this person must be calmer in a boardroom or can, has presence in a meeting or can handle tough questions. You have to sell that part, right? I have to sell that part every time I apply for a job, that this experience did give me extra training for the job I'm applying for. There is this perception also on the negative side that being in academia too long makes you untrainable for industry, right? So you have to do things to combat that perception as well. But in the end, it's, whether it be multiple papers, collaborations, places you've lived, groups that you've managed, projects, etc. There are things that I think you can play up as a part of that experience toward that next job. So that's the main way I'd talk about it. On everything else being even, hiring managers, recruiters, they look at postdocs on a resume and they probably don't know what to make of it. So it's probably just write it off. It's like, oh, they have a PhD, great. They have these tools and skills on their resume. They probably don't care. So it's up to you how you play that up.
If anyone has further comments on that, feel free to say so. All right. Then I guess we have some people interested in how you personally built your networks. So did you have connections prior, or how did you build it up? Maybe Yan, we can start with you there.
Yeah, I didn't have many connections. I was totally different from Annabelle. I found my job just by applying and being lucky and found a job. And then for now, since COVID hit pretty soon after I started working, most of my networking has been done online, on LinkedIn, events like this, stuff like that, and a lot inside the company, because Decathlon is very big. Like there's around 100,000 employees in the world. So I traveled to Spain to meet people from the data science teams in France, Spain, Germany, and there's people working here that moved to those countries, and we work with people internationally a lot. So that's a big network that I have for now. I don't know many more data scientists in other companies in Quebec. Unfortunately, that's one thing that I'm gonna have to build as well, a network like that, because of COVID. Like I said, I didn't have time to meet people that much. One thing that I can say is that when I started to look into data science, so then again, the last year of my PhD, I reached out to a few people that I knew or that I've heard of who did studies in physics and switched to data science. So I had coffee with them, talked to them via email, stuff like that. So those people, I think it's the biggest network that I have outside of the company, of Decathlon.
Great, thanks. And Annabelle?
One thing I would add, I didn't have a lot of connections either. But one thing I did is subscribing to LinkedIn Premium, which allowed me to email people I was interested in without having them in my network yet. So when I was looking for jobs, especially at the beginning, I made a list of all the companies I found interesting and made it, I just like emailed basically all the people in like the CDOs of these companies basically through LinkedIn. And I was surprised. I got 80%, I would say, ratio on the answers. So it was pretty efficient. And sometimes it was like, no, we don't have a lot of, we don't have job opportunities in the company yet, or maybe check later. And sometimes it was like, yeah, sure, let's go grab coffee and discuss opportunities. And so I think that was how I built my network mostly. And also, it was mentioned before, meetups. I used to, in Montreal, I used to attend meetups, and I was part of Data for Good, which is a small group of data scientists trying to, work on projects pro bono on the side. In Montreal, it was also very, very great for me because I met a lot of data scientists from different companies.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. So we do have to close out very shortly. So I just wondered, what would you like to leave the audience with?
I think the data science is really fun. And if you enjoy physics, I think data science and machine learning is I would say similar. And the one thing that we didn't mention much is what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, the how people act and how people work, and you're pretty much free, similar to how you are in grad school compared to what we would think in industry, that you have to fix schedule and do exactly what your boss asks you. And there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of possibility for advancement and learning. So it's pretty fun, I think, to do that. And don't hesitate to also just look into it and try to see if it's fun. Don't do it for the money or to have a job. Do it because it's fun.
Thanks.
I'll say, like I said, I described the hiring process before, starting with a screening call and then progressing to different stages of interviews and homework. If you're applying and if you're not getting a lot of requests for screening calls, then it's probably time to ask people to give you feedback on your resume, right? If you're getting a lot of screen calls, but not making it to the next stage, then it might be time for you to reach out to people and role play, do some mock interviews, see things you could be doing to increase your odds of making it to that next step. Then if you make it to the homework stage, right, and if that's the bottleneck, then you probably want to, practice doing those kinds of exercises, looking up examples online, asking, hiring, your people in your network to see if they can help. So first-time applicants, first-time job seekers, you're going to hit hurdles probably at multiple points of those stages, and just have to optimize for different things to get better at each stage. And once you're getting shots on goal at each stage, then it's only a matter of time. I don't think it's about luck at that point. once you're getting consistent, make it consistently to the next round each time. That's going to, it's a process, but that's how you gauge success, I think, in am I going to make it. We didn't get a chance to talk about the different kinds of data careers. The title data scientist can mean a ton of different things. I will say there are roughly 3 buckets of technical data roles at the individual contributor level. One is data science, and that title usually implies that you'll be doing some level of machine learning, some level of deploying models, some level of predicting or categorizing, product performance or consumer behavior, something like that, some sort of advanced analytics. There's another bucket, the second one, which is data analyst or business intelligence analyst. That role usually implies, that title implies that you're building dashboards, that you're doing descriptive analytics, you might be making presentations to say, hey, here's how we did last month, or here's how the product launch went. Here's a new set of insights that we learned about our customers. So that's a different bucket, slightly different, but overlapping bucket of skills. The third bucket is data engineering. And in that role, you are stewarding the data. You are taking raw data from one place into, say, a data warehouse. You might be cleaning it. You might be automating a flow. You might be deploying the automation of a machine learning model. So essentially, you are in that role, you are acting as the architects or the plumbers of the data that makes everything flow so that everything is automated and nice and runs cleanly. And those are the 3 buckets of data with some overlap. A data scientist at a small company might be asked to do all 3. There could be a data science job title that's essentially all data analytics. So there is some overlap, but I think those are the 3 schools. And then data scientists and data analysts, often you're asked to have, or it benefits you to have an interpersonal component where you can communicate and distill the things that you're finding to non-technical coworkers or clients, that you can explain your models, you can do advanced statistical analysis and then distill it to say, hey, this is what we found. And in data engineering, it's the component that's more interpersonal is probably less on average. But as you think about what a data career looks like, I would think about those 3 buckets and see where your strengths are. I know that when I'm talking to candidates or when I've applied to jobs in the past, I was able to speak about components of each one and where I had strength. And that really lets your hiring managers know and your future coworkers perhaps know what kind of strengths you have and where you have room to grow. So definitely think about that.
Thank you. That's great. Annabelle, something to add as a last note?
I'd say don't be afraid of accepting or applying to job that you feel might not be exactly in the scope of what you be interested in, or you feel like you don't check all of the skill boxes. Go for it, because most of the time, like having gone through this process and as a data scientist now, I receive a lot of application every day, and I see like people like you don't hire only people for their skills, you hire for who they are as well, and it's a very important component. Every interview is an opportunity for you to learn. So even if it's not exactly what you think it should be, try it out. And maybe you're gonna be surprised, because it's not always about what you like, it's not always about the mission, it's also about the team, right? If you have a super interesting team that's basically supporting you in learning, even if it's not exactly what you imagined as a mission, it's gonna be super interesting, right? So yeah, try it out. and don't be desperate. To give you an idea, I probably applied to probably 70 jobs since the beginning, like after I left academia. So for my first shot at it, I probably sent out 35, 40 curriculum and resumes and got probably a 10% success rate, which is actually not too bad. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay to try it out, and even if you fail, every time you learn. So yeah, that's what I would like to say.
Thanks, Annabelle. Jeffrey?
Yeah, sort of similar to some of the things that Annabelle was just saying, but I just want to recognize that changing your career from something that you've done for 5, 10, maybe 20 years is scary and stressful and potentially, disappointing or disheartening. You've studied your whole life effectively, and most of your adult life, most likely, in this field. And so it's intimidating and scary to change careers, in your 20s or 30s or 40s. And so I just want to recognize that is a feeling that everyone is thinking when they do this process. And, that's okay. Let's recognize that. Let's feel those feelings. And, if you're considering this career change, it's because there are negatives in your current career that you hope get better. There's hopefully positives on the data science and tech side that you want to get into your life and into your career. You'll be using a heck of a lot of your skills, if not all of the skills that you've developed. So it's not like you've thrown away the last 10 years of your life studying astronomy or physics. You'll be learning new skills. You'll be applying them in new and hopefully interesting to you ways. And you certainly don't have to, completely leave your academic friends or studies behind. I still give public talks in bars about astronomy. Astronomy on Tap is one of the things that I'm a worldwide leader in still. And yeah, I talk about big data, but I also still talk about supernova. And I still run star parties locally because I've got telescopes and I still remember some of the constellations. And I go to the American Astronomical Society meeting every year. I've been running a astronomer turned data science splinter session as sort of networking, bringing back alums of the astronomy field, mostly in the US, to the astronomy community to have that overlap. And so, I kind of am bummed I don't get to go to telescopes and stay up all night observing, because I did actually like that. But I've got my little telescopes and, I can still do some of this astronomy related stuff. So yeah, that was sort of the last thing I wanted to leave people with.
Great. Thank you so much, all 4 of you. This was really informative. So everyone type your thanks into the chat and so that our panelists can see how much you appreciate their work. And that'll be the end of the event. I was thrilled to get to be able to talk to you, and have a nice day, everybody.